I mentioned in a video recently that I don't really feel I don't really I feel responsible still for the way my tax dollars are used, even when I don't approve of how they're used. And I pointed out that, I can't really say that I am actually materially coerced. I've never refused to pay my taxes. Nobody has ever come to force me. Yes, I feel coerced and pressured to some degree. But I don't think that just saying I don't approve frees you of responsibility. It's like if you don't approve of stealing, but somebody gives you money that they stole from some little old lady, if you don't know about that, maybe you're not culpable in the same way as the criminal is, though, it's interesting because if you have stolen goods, there's an assumption in the law of a certain amount of due diligence. You can be blamed with that, mostly for pragmatic reasons, so that people fencing receiving stolen goods can't just say, "Oh, I didn't know." It'd be too easy. But with money, maybe it's a little easier to say, "Well, you don't know where all the money came from." But in reality, there is a responsibility that's still there. What if you receive the money, start spending it, and somebody tells you? You find out where it comes from. Do you have to give the money back? Morally, should you have to give the money back? Does the fact that you say, "I don't approve of stealing," absolve you of the need to pay that money back? Again, you might not be treated like the actual criminal if you weren't involved in the actual theft. But yes, you'd have to give that money or those goods back to those people, including if it screws you out. Maybe you gave money to the criminal uh, to get this thing that fell off a truck, and now you've lost your money and the goods, right? Or if you were to belong to some group like a gated community, and you find out they're using some of the fees you pay to the homeowners association to buy weapons and security personnel that are killing people that sneak in to play golf at night. Would you be responsible for that at all? You know, it's not totally a clear situation, but certainly saying, well, I don't approve of that, but going on and giving the money to the fees in the form of fees to the organization, and it keeps doing this policy, yeah, you would develop some sort of culpability. When you benefit and take part in a system, uh, you can't just say, oh, well, I don't approve of that part, and be absolved of your responsibility. Okay? In the gated community, it might be smart to leave and not take part, not to keep taking part in that. Well, we have a really big gated community, you know, and you can leave the United States, right? The problem there is that it pretty much goes on in every community, in every country, unless you're one of them that's being brutalized. But that's a practical thing, okay? That's why it's better in your personal best interest. That doesn't answer the moral question. And you can't simply say, well, I don't approve, and therefore, it's not my responsibility. In an ideal situation, you could refuse to pay your taxes, and the worst the government could do is say, well, then you don't get any government services. But then you couldn't go on the roads. Your kids couldn't go to the public school, and so on and so forth. All right? I obviously don't support a system like that, but that's going off on a tangent as to why that kind of system doesn't work. But in terms of individual liberty and individual choice of what you take part in, the idea of free association, once you've associated, why should you have to emigrate from the country? Well, why should you have to move out of your house? Why should you have to give goods back that you paid for? Because they didn't belong to you. So, what is the responsibility if you have gold and it was stolen from people? If you have gold and it was stolen from the Lakota, or it involves the oppression of an African nation. What is your responsibility? It's a complicated question, but one thing I'm sure of is that just saying you don't approve does not absolve you of the responsibility. Now, if you feel this way and take responsibility for the things you put into and also for the things you benefit from, the parts of the system that you're benefiting from, take oil, for example. You fill up your gas, but I don't approve of the oil industry. So you're absolved. You're still buying oil cheaper than you would otherwise. The whole system of what they do in other nations, how they operate, you're taking part in that system. And to say, well, I don't know the details, and furthermore, I don't approve, but, fill her up, you can't be absolved of responsibility that way. Now, it changes your life to think this way because you end up being responsible a little bit for all kinds of terrible travesties. But that's just the way that life is. We've denied that and thought we could purify ourselves with intentions and thoughts. We were wrong. The real result is that when you see the world this way, you realize that you have to be active, you have to be involved, you have to try to change the way things work on some level. You don't necessarily have to go fight each and every injustice. You're just one person, but you have to do something. You have to do something to try to make this system better in the short term, the medium term, the long term. You have to at least vote. You have to at least educate yourself so that you do know what's going on with these kinds of responsibilities and where your responsibilities lie, and inform yourself about what could you do differently to be less responsible, or better yet, to change the system that is causing this. So I think anybody that pays taxes in the United States definitely has to have a big pang of concern about the way that their money, yes, their money and their productivity is being used. All right. Now, the responsibility for a taxpayer is not the same as the responsibility for somebody signing the memo. Yeah, torture him. Okay. But it's also not nil. It's not non-existent. And also, in terms of the coercion, you cannot pay your taxes. A lot of people do get away with it. A lot of working class people take money under the table their whole lives, and they, likely are doing it to, so that they don't have to pay the taxes and cost the money. But it could be done for ethical and moral reasons as well. So it's not enough to say, I have no choice about this, that, and the other, and I don't approve about the other, this, and that, and think that that absolves you. It doesn't. And, and if you realize that you are involved, you do have some sort of complex or subtle ethical role to play in this, then you realize you have to do something about it. And those of us already doing something about it, we shouldn't absolve ourselves either. This should be the attitude. Because if everybody felt this way, everybody that doesn't want to oppress people around the world and isn't just paying it lip service, if every one of them felt they had to stand up, find out what was going on, do something about it, vote against it, get active, then, I think things would change, and probably, remarkably quickly compared to the speed of change we see in a world where people absolve themselves of responsibilities, even direct ones, but certainly indirect responsibilities as a matter of course.